Dakota Meyer, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
What's up, man? I appreciate you having me on.
It's good to have you, man. This has been a long time coming, and maybe a show that's rather unexpected. I mean, I think everybody and their brother at this point has probably heard your story and
Yeah.
what you've been through, and I know that's not even a direction you'd like to go in today. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, look, that was like, it's one story, it's one day. That was like you're talking 2011, right? You're talking if I don't have more to talk about in 8 years than that one day. Come on.
No, I hear you, man. Today, what we're going to focus on is maybe something you don't get to talk about every day, and that's being like how does Dakota Meyer go about fatherhood? You know, you obviously come from a lot of different experiences in life, and
Yeah,
I definitely want to get to that as far as what your mindset is with fatherhood and how you go about it. But where I'd really like to start is I know you have this view of we have choices.
yep.
We can either be a victim or we can be someone who's more of a contributor, someone who's going to take action. How did you get to that place of knowing that that's a choice?
Man, it's just like one of those deals. Like I call it the day of reckoning, right? It's just a day that you finally. I think it's like I think it's. I can't go to bed and think that people don't like that. People want to wake up and be a victim, right? A victim never gets you anywhere. Being the victim never gets you anywhere, and you have the power in that, right? Like you have the power in whether you're the victim or whether you're not. And it's all in the choice of how you tell your story. Um, I can tell you the same story. I can take anybody's story and tell it in a way that they're the victim, or I can tell it in a way that they've got fucking control. And that's what it is. And I think, for me, it took a long time for me to get there. But I just think that like, I finally got tired of looking in the mirror and seeing who I was. And I had to, the hardest part about changing that choice is that the day you change that choice and you're not the victim is the day that you have control, that you can fix it. And then that's where the work starts. And
Mm.
that's the problem, right? A lot of people hold off on making that choice because just for the clear intent of if you become if you are not the victim anymore, now you're in control of it and now you have some responsibility to do something about it. And then that's where the work starts. And a lot of us fear that work.
I know for you, if I'm dating it properly, perhaps that aha moment came for you the day that you were in the truck and you had that Glock,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
thank God it was unloaded, but it was that aha moment for you that when you're like, hey, if I put the car in drive and
Mhm.
I start going home, things are gonna change. What was that moment like for you?
Look, anybody can kill themselves. Like anybody can do it. It's the easiest thing you'll ever have to do. And it's the last choice you'll ever have to make. Like, let's just go ahead and lay it out there, right? I think a lot of times we bounce around these things because we just don't, it's kind of like having the sex talk with your kids, right? Like we just bounce around these topics of suicide and all these things because like we don't want to, it's like, well, it's a taboo topic to talk about. Well, look, like killing yourself, look, it gets rid of all your problems. It does. Like let's just state the obvious, right? But it's not the right thing to do. It's not. It's a permanent. I know this is the cliche word or the tagline, right? It's a permanent. It's a permanent decision for a temporary problem. And there's a lot more life to live, right? And whatever lies are telling you are being in your head at that moment, they're not true, and it's not reality. It's a bad. I always say, are you like, people they want to, man, my life sucks, right? How many times you heard that? Well, does your life suck, or does your day suck, or does your minute suck? So I think, yeah, I think the first time I really had to look in the mirror and take start that. And then there's a whole nother process I'll talk about. But like, yeah, the first time I ever recognized that, hey, I'm not the victim anymore and I do have control of this was when I put the gun to my head and squeezed the trigger. And but I want to say this, and I think this is where a lot of people get upset and they lose confidence is they think that I made the decision that day, or they make the decision one day and then it lasts forever. There's some days I have to make that decision 10 times a day, every hour, every minute. You don't just make it once, you continuously make it, right?
Yep.
And you make that choice every single time you're presented with the option to not make that choice. And sometimes it could be every second, it could be every minute, it could be every hour, sometimes it's days, sometimes it's weeks, but every single time you're presented with that option, you have to make that choice again. And I think that, I make that choice every day. I make that choice every day of, you know, do I am I going to be the victim? Am I going to complain and complain about my problems, or am I going to go do something about it? Having a mission that's worthy, a purpose that's worthy, having and doing something. The problem that people get into is they it's harder for them. If you're not living for something bigger than yourself, it's hard to make the decision to do the right thing. You know, the worst place you can get is not. I mean, how often do you let yourself down? How often do people make a commitment to themselves of, hey, I'm going to lose weight for example, um, for New Year's resolution, right?
Right.
They make a commitment to themselves and then they let themselves down.
Yep.
And it's like it's easy to let yourself down, but how often do people show up to work on time, but they can't keep themselves fit? They won't let down their job, but they'll let their health down because it's easy there. So if you don't have a purpose that you're living for that's bigger than you, you're going to let yourself down. It's going to make it harder to make that choice. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I can definitely relate to. Sometimes it's a daily. It's a daily choice. Sometimes it's, especially a father. Sometimes it's a
Oh,
minute choice, man. Like, I mean, it's that. What I've heard you say on other shows is your wins last as long as your losses, and vice versa, right?
yeah.
So I think it's a constant reminder of making that choice. Question I have for you is, I think where most men struggle the most, even fathers, it's within that millisecond of like, I have a choice. I'm going to choose not to be the victim. So it's right in that space of like, I need to choose, and I'm going to choose not to be a victim. What do you think the foundation of that choice is?
Well, I'll tell you the problem is though, first, right? Like I always say, look, I attack everything in my life the same way that I attacked it in the military, right? So number one, you got to have a mission and a purpose. Number two, you better know the enemy so you can identify the enemy, right? So what's working against you? And so with this, a lot of times in those choices, we've made those the wrong choice so long that guess what? It's an automated response, and we didn't even recognize there was a choice to it, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
so you got to recognize that. And and there's a lot of reasons that we do think, we do make these bad decisions because of social, like of the way that the world tells us that men should be, right? You look at, all this, well, masculinity, or we're going to offend somebody, or we don't want my kids to do this, right? We know what's right and wrong, and we have to stand for that. But I think the fundamental problem is like we're not living, and the other problem of this is like a lot of men haven't seen, they didn't have good fathers.
Right.
They didn't have a good example. They don't even know what right looks like. And then if they found the wrong thing and think that's what right is, a lot of them are just doing what they've been taught.
Yeah. Repeating history.
Repeating history, right?
Right. And it doesn't, yeah, you go back to, I think the majority of, I mean, there's a huge percentage of adults now, right, that didn't grow up with anything. And definitely fathers of that generation did not have the resources that we do today. You know, one thing that we say all the time in our community, and we've talked about it time and time again on this show, is men sort of take pride in like this lone wolf thing, right? They think the lone
Yeah.
wolf is strong, right? They don't allow others to help. One of the hardest things we do is ask for help. And I like I said, I know your history as far as people you surrounded yourself with, as
Yeah.
far as mental health, as far as physical health and spiritual health. And you talk so often about building a team. Why is building a team important to us as fathers?
Well, I mean, I think at any point in time, I mean, you know, um, your father in your entire life is kind of like your counsel, right? Like he teaches you how to be a man, how to be a husband, how to be a father, how to, I mean, that he kind of sets the role model. And the same thing for women, right? Women do the same thing for, their kids, right? Their daughters. And even, there's a lot of roles that are played. And I think, through your entire life, what I found is you always need counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really important to always have counsel. You can go back to biblical times, right? I mean, churches have counsel. You take there's always counsel. And I always try to surround myself with counsel, and it changes. Like it always changes in the time of your life that you're in, right? But I've been fortunate enough, gosh, my entire life to have such incredible. The only skill that I will give myself is that I know how to find incredible people to surround myself with. I don't know why. I don't know why people like Tim Kennedy, Chris Schmidt, Toby Young, Eric Leha, Juan Leha. I mean, I don't know, Shane Steiner. I mean, I can go down the list of these incredible people. Michael Skinner. Um, I don't know why they surround me or they see something in me, but I have found a way to make people like that, people who are incredibly better than me, believe in me enough to let me in their group. And that's probably the only thing that's got me to where I'm at in life is I have found really, really, I have an ability to surround myself with incredible people who I couldn't be any of them. Like I could never Jocko. I mean, I could never touch a tenth of who they are. But you know what? I'll keep them around me so that I know what right and what I need to strive to be every single day are.
What advice do you have for men? This might make you laugh,
Mm,
or it might make you, or you might nod with like, yeah, I get that. What advice do you have for men to be like, I don't like surrounding myself with people who are better than me because it reminds me what a failure I am?
yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's we're all failures. Everybody's a failure. Everybody needs counsel. Everybody, no matter how badass you are, um, there's always somebody better than you, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so just, I mean, why you look, recognize you're not the best, recognize you're the best who you are every day, and surround yourself with people who are going to make you better. Like, I mean, that's a fact of, that's a, people who look at things like that, that is that's a weak person. That is a weak person who looks at things like that, right? Like the person that makes excuses, the person that, and that's fine to make excuses, but what are you doing about it, right? Like I always have this saying of, don't bitch about it or bring it up if you're not willing to do something about it yourself, right? Like don't bring me a problem that you're not willing to fix yourself.
I like that. What's your view on like the bitch for 5 minutes and then be done with it and then move on
Yeah,
to
I
the
mean,
solution?
it's fine. I always, my thought pattern on problems is 5% bitching about it, stating the problem, whatever you want to call it, bitching about it, stating the problem, 5% of coming up with the solution and the plan of action, and 90% action.
I love that.
Like,
That's a
right, it's 5 5 90. And I promise you, if you spend 90%, even if your plan is only 10% right, that 90% of you planning on the action will make up for the rest of
I love it, man. Taking meticulous notes as you talk.
it. Yeah, I like it. I like it. But we do have a problem in America as far as fathers and men. We have there's a war on masculinity, and I see all these things, and I see the rise in domestic violence and rapes and all this, and people think, well, that's masculinity. Bullshit. That's what happens when you take masculinity away. When a man is so weak he puts his hand on a woman, that's because he's weak and he's not masculine. And he doesn't take pride in being a man. And he doesn't look in the mirror and have this intestinal fortitude that, hey, I am a man and I'm an honorable human being and I won't let somebody put their hands on a woman and I won't do the same, right? Like these are actions from masculinity dropping. And I think the problem in America is we've let people like Harvey Weinstein or whatever his name is, and all these other nasty people represent, like they have like the media has said this is what masculinity is, and that's false. It's the exact opposite. And us as men, in my eyes, a man is strong. He's he's powerful, but he's kind of like a lion. He knows where to use that power, right? Like
Right.
lions don't attack a gazelle that's wounded. Lions go after the gazelle that's not wounded. Lions are very meticulous and very, they know how to use their power, right? And that's what a man should be. A man should, there's nothing greater that God ever gave us than a woman, like, right? Like that's why God put a woman on the earth. And for us not to, the day that we don't look at a woman and say, this is the most precious, greatest thing that God gave us, and we stop looking at women that way and respecting and appreciating them, is a day that we are the same as the countries that I went and fought wars in that are crumbling themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You look at any empire that stopped respecting and appreciating women and protecting their women, they all fell.
I
Show me
agree.
a society
Yeah.
that doesn't respect their women and it's not fell.
Yeah. So for a man who is, so I know you have Sailor and Atlee.
Yeah, Sailor and Atlee.
Yeah. So what is most important for you to emulate as a man?
Yeah. So for me to emulate, okay, I think that, yeah, because there's two things as far as like emulate and then wanting to instill in them, right? Like,
Right.
they're two really distinct things. Um, you know, this emulation piece is it's a long-winded one, so you got to get through me with, get through it with me. But
Of course.
to emulate, I feel like, number one, I'm gonna be the example of and a girl told me this one time, and it really struck home, and it made me learn. She said, I'll never accept or be with someone who's not like my father. And that, it really hit home to me, because when I start really thinking about that, now I'm a really deep thinker, which is good and bad. Um, the best example of a man to my daughter is her dad. I'm gonna forge into her what a man should be, of how a man should treat her. And why I never want my daughter, I want to be a man that I want my daughter to marry someday. And so I think that's number one, right? My number one of what I want to show her by an example is the quality of a man that she should be looking for when she marries. I want to give her an example. And I think that, so that's number one. Um, Number two, I think that she should also know how, I give her the example of how to treat a woman. That's why, like, when I look at the way that men treat women out there, you know what I always think about? That's someone's daughter. That's someone's wife. That's someone's mother. And I think about that every time I'm driving down the road and I see a woman on the side of the road with a blown tire trying to change her tire. I think about that every time I walk into I see a woman getting ready to come through a door behind me or in front of me. I hold the door. How would you want someone to treat your mother or your daughter? So I think that that's another example that I want to give my daughters is how to treat a woman, or how they should be treated, right? And I think that that's where, like, you know these staying in marriages, obviously, getting divorced is the worst, is the absolute. It's like cutting away your main canopy and going to your reserve, right? um but on the backside of it, staying in a relationship just for the kids is just as bad. And I think it's just as bad because if you're empty and lonely and not happy, I don't want my daughter to be that. I'd rather her be a single mother and know that she's independent and know that she's strong and she doesn't have to rely on a man her entire life. That she can get a divorce if she had to, all else fails, that it's not working. But I don't want her to ever think that she should have to be miserable in a marriage.
You want to hear some crazy statistics? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So obviously, we all know the divorce rate's 50%.
Hmm.
So the 50% that stay together, one third 1/3 of those people can actually deem themselves as being thrivingly happy. Another one
Wow.
third, yeah, another 1/3 is, uh, I, I, I guess we're okay. I'm happy enough. And then the last 1/3 of the people who stay together are, uh, I hate this person, I despise this person, I'm completely miserable, but I'll stay together for the kids or for finances or for another, for whatever
Yep.
else. But that, I mean, really, like, only it's such a small, minute uh, percentage of people who are married actually are that person you describe, to where like they're really happy. And I agree with you because, not to say that I'm a fan of divorce, but I think you're sending the wrong message if you're married and absolutely miserable. Because I mean, think of the tension and the issues that go on, and the kids see that. And you're exactly right. Sometimes, in certain situations, it's better to separate,
Yep.
than to stay together. Because what example are you setting?
Well, I mean, and I don't think, look, I think you don't fix the divorce problem, the divorce rate, by staying in a marriage.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
think you fix it that way. I think you fix it by building, strong, independent children that understand what it's like to be respectable men and women.
Hmm.
And I think that's how you fix it in the long run. I mean, because look, even if you stay in it, you did give them an example of a marriage. And then on the backside of it, you think they want to be in that? They're like, oh, well, my parents were miserable. Like, I'd never want that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, no matter what. So it's like, look, you don't stay in a problem. And I learned, look, the hardest part about me in the divorce, number one, was a failure. Um, number two is the fact that I wasn't going to be with my kids 100% of the time. But I tell you this, Bristol's a better mother, and I'm a better father to our children by us not being married.
What's when you do have your daughters, when they're around you, and I mean, let's face it, I had the same question for Jocko. Um,
Yeah.
Jocko has 4 kids. He's married. Everybody wants something from him at all times. Just it's a fire hose of things coming at you all at once. So when you're with Sailor and Atlee, how do you make that time count with them? What's most important to you?
Well, it's hard. I mean, it's a hard balance,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, this was my mindset going through this divorce. I got 50-50 custody. So I got week on, week off. To me, I just gave up 9 years of my daughter's life. I gave up 9 years I'm going to miss on my daughter's life. So now, how do you make 18 years worth in 9 years? And how do you give them that example and that father? And for me, what I do is I look. There's some times that look, because here's the problem, right? Even on those 50% of time, you still got the 100% of the work you got to do.
Hmm.
Nothing changes. It ain't like you can give more time. So it's a struggle of the balance of, well, do I work? Do I not? You know what I mean? Like, you try to make up for it and you can't. You just can't. Like, you got to go ahead and accept that. But what I do is I spend every moment, like, there's like times of the day that are important to me. When they go to bed, after they get home from school, no matter what, like, I sit down with them in the chair. We spend an hour together. Every day I have them, like, an hour of quality time. No phones. We're watching TV, whatever they want to watch, we're watching it. We spend time together in the mornings. I take them to school, right? I get them to take them to daycare. So I get them up and I do that routine with them. I like to be the first one to wake up with them, as long as I'm not traveling, right? Um, and I tell you the other thing that I do that just consciously, something that I don't know why, it's just a big deal to me. But every time my daughters ask me to hug them, pick them up, or hold them, I never tell them no. I never tell them no, right? Like if that's kind of my one rule. Now, look, if my 2-year-old is trying to get out of walking through, HEB, if she's doing it out of, hey, I want to, I want to be lazy or whatever. It's a different story. But like, I don't tell them no to pick them up and hold them. And every time I see them, I don't care if I see them, I tell them that I love them. I look them in the eyes and I tell them I love them more times than probably any parent should ever tell their kids they love them. But I just they're gonna grow up and they're gonna know one thing is for certain, and that's that their dad loves them.
I'm going to share something with you because I feel it's necessary for you to hear it and the audience to hear it. You know, you put more purpose and intention in the 50% that you have your kids than guys who are around their kids 100%. And I want you to know that. I mean, because there are men that see their kids every day. In Dakota, they don't do that.
And you know what? And I see that, and I man, I hear dads all the time. Like, look, I went to make sure that I could be a good father to my kids. I went to a month-long nanny school and became a certified nanny and infant care specialist so that I knew that my kids would never sacrifice because of lack of my knowledge. I used to fly to Alaska every other week and raise my kids out of a hotel. My daughter, Sailor, at 3 month old, out of a hotel room for 4 days at a time. Every other week, I'd fly from Kentucky or wherever I was at to Alaska to raise her out of a hotel room 4 days every other week. Um, I will be broke sitting on the side of the road in a cardboard box, but my kids will know that I love them. It'll never go forgotten. And I hear guys all the time, and it's almost like it makes me sick. And I call them out, and I think us as dads, we have to call other dads out about this. I sure when I tell you this, you're gonna be like, man, I hear it. Guys go, yeah, man, I never changed a diaper. I got through, I only changed one diaper. And I'm like, and I hear them do this in a bragging way. And I'm like, man, like you're a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like me, I'm telling you, from the first time that I laid my eyes on Sailor, I didn't get to meet her until she was 3 months old. I can never forget the first time, I flew up there, I got to meet her, and I was flying home and I had like all this business going on. My construction company was just ramping up. I mean, I was hitting on all cylinders, man. I mean, I had more opportunities going at that time than I've ever in my life. Like, and man, I left that day. I'll never forget. I got on an airplane and I was flying from Anchorage to I don't know. I think it was Vegas because I had to go out there for a meeting. And the whole flight, I couldn't even sleep, no matter how tired I was, because all I was thinking was, is I'm going to give up everything that I have, and I don't care if I have to go work at McDonald's. I'm going to be there and give my time to my daughter. And I don't understand the guys that don't look at it that way. I don't understand the guys that I couldn't imagine having any other way. Like my girls, man, I've never gone more than 4 days without FaceTiming them since they've both been alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't imagine, like they're they're my everything. And I'm not saying like they're the reason I get up and live. I mean, obviously they're but there's nothing in my life that's more important, more time concerning than the fact of, if my daughters want me to spend time with them, they're gonna fucking get it. There's no amount of money for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important, you know what I mean? Like it's fucking important. And I don't know, I don't get the mindset of people who see it any other way. That's they're my world. Like I love those girls.
I see you as such a active participant in your kid's life. Obviously, purpose and intention. The thing that I see most men doing is what we call the drift, or we call the wash, rinse, repeat, where they're just sort of there and just kind of on automatic pilot. But here's the interesting thing. I think if you really get to the heart and soul of any guy, even if they're on the drift, they want it. They want in, man. They want to live like that intention and purpose. And the thing that I've heard men struggle with the most is, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
My dad didn't do it for me, so I don't know how to do it. uh, they don't have the roadmap, and maybe it goes back to like the story that they're telling themselves of this victim mentality, and they need to just do it,
Well,
or they get into like the busyness of life, and they're too busy, they're too worn out, they're too exhausted, too stressed out, whatever it is. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you. Like that's like I kind of just said a minute ago, right? It's number one, they've never seen what being a good dad is. Um, because think about this, right? Like if you go back probably two generations, not your father, but you know their father,
Mm-hmm.
the women didn't work as much. The men were always gone because they were bringing in two incomes, right? Like that's kind of how it was back in the day. Um, I'm not saying as much, but it was kind of more of a look at as, hey, the woman takes care of the kids, the men go and work. Um, but man, like I and I think the second part of this is let me tell you this. I know I say all this and it sounds beautiful and sweet and whatever else, but it's fucking hard.
Yeah, I mean, call it like it is. It is.
I mean, let's just call it. Like, let me tell
Yeah.
you that don't think that every time that I pick them up or they're in a good mood or they're not throwing a temper tantrum or they're not, you know what I mean? Like and it's hard. It's extremely hard. And I think that that's another piece that that men don't do it because it is hard. And I think that the problem is that society has given men such a low bar of what being a dad is. I mean, think about this. The court system, the normal court system says that that for you to be a father, you have to be you're with your kid every other weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Every other weekend. That's all you have to do to be a father.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's
Say,
insane.
yeah.
And all these dads that are writing checks for child support and they're only with their kid every other weekend, they're getting off on the easy side of the work part. They're missing out on their child's life, but when it comes to work, that check is easier to write than it is to raise that kid every other week. And I think it's just hard. And I think that I wish we could find a way to fix it because I mean it is hard. I mean it's hard raising my kids. I mean it's hard coming off of working all week and then coming home to I mean raising a 2 and 3 year old daughters. It's hard, and I run my own companies. I have to travel with them. It's hard, but guess what? It's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth it. It's worth it. You go to work every day to bring home money for whatever shit you think you need. I promise you that what I put into my daughters and what I get out of them when I come in and they love me no matter what, or they put their arms around me and they tell me they love me, or they tell me that they tell me that I'm a great daddy, or they call me and tell me they miss me. You ain't got enough money to pay for that.
Right. I agree with you, man. I've said this on previous shows, but kids spell love Time. And I didn't coin that one. That came from a previous guest of mine, Aaron Walker. But it's so true. I just got back this weekend from a retreat that I hosted, and my 11-year-old went with me.
Oh wow.
And part of the retreat was we had to hike up Mount Quandary, which is 14,265-foot peak. It took 11 hours round trip. My 11-year-old went with me.
Wow.
I was blown away that he did it, that he accomplished it. But he's a stubborn little dude, and he's one of 4 kids that I have. I have 4 boys. But as we were hiking, I mean, it was a long hike. We tried to keep his mind off the pain by asking him questions. Like the whole team of us guys, there was 10 of
Yeah.
us, and some of the answers, like, hey, what's most important to you as a son? What do you need from us as dads? Like what's your favorite thing to do? And I think probably he was asked like 30 questions. And if you look at the theme of what he always centered around, it was never stuff. It was never
Nope.
like, it was, oh, I need a new Game Boy, or I need a new Sony PlayStation, or it all revolved around activities, time, affection, um, just sitting there like he's like, one of my favorite things to do is like to chill with my dad while we watch one of my favorite movies. Like
I mean,
just the
how cool is
time.
that?
Yeah.
How cool is that, right? Like, how good that make you feel?
Oh, it made me feel awesome. Like, cause it, but when we really started talking to him, like it was that whole theme of like intentional time. That was it. That was really it.
Intentional time. Not
Yeah.
not just, look, a lot of times, like, I mean, I have a nanny that obviously has to help me with, my travel. My schedule's crazy, right? And a lot of times, like, I'll let her do bath time.
Yeah.
And then, I'll get home right after bath time, so that I can sit there and spend intentional time with them. Not rushing, getting you to bed time, intentional time. I think that's a big, that's a big thing right there, right?
Yeah.
Intentional time. But how cool is that, right? I mean, 11-year-old. I mean, you got to look at that and be like, that's people are always chasing success. That's success right there.
Yeah.
I mean, your kid is sitting here telling you, you're 11-year-old, with all these outside factors of social media, of everything, YouTube, of I like a materialistic world, and he says he wants time with his dad.
Mm-hmm.
That's success. That means that you're getting it right. How cool is that?
It's awesome, man. It really
An
is. I
11
mean,
year old.
yeah. You know, I agree with you though. There are times, this is where I think the rubber kind of meets the road. I don't think I've ever said this on any other show because I agree with you. I mean, I've had some amazing guests, but what you said there was super raw about it being hard
It's hard.
because man, there are times like you said, you own your own business, right? Uh, you probably work like a maniac, like most guys do, right? It's really important to you, and I'm sure there are times where you're like, holy shit, it's been a long day, and now I have to be dad. And even though you thoroughly enjoy it, right? There's that time where it's like, man, this is hard. Here's where I think it messes with us guys is that there's an overwhelming amount of guilt that goes with like, fuck, man, this is hard. I should enjoy it. I should do this. I should do that. Like we start doing this thing where we're shooting on ourselves and we just don't call it like it is. Like, man, this is enjoyable, but it's really hard. Like it's hard for us to say that. What advice do you have for us guys who are like just shooting on ourselves and constantly like throwing guilt at ourselves?
Well, so I think there's this problem, and I had this. I don't know if I've ever talked about this openly. Um, in the beginning, I had Sailor, and we didn't have Atlee until 15, 16 months after Sailor, right? So I kind of I got it down with Sailor, man. I knew everything she needed. I mean, it's kind of like clockwork, right? Like I could fix our problems, and uh, and I just got her out of that phase of she was sleeping through the night. I mean, life was getting easier, and we had Atlee, and man, it rocked my world. And everybody's sitting there. I mean, I had a lot of guilt, man. I left, and I had a lot of guilt because, like, I'd say the first 2 to 3 months, I'll never forget. I called a guy. I can remember where I was sitting at when I finally had to call a guy, and I was like, "Dude, I don't like this. Like, is something wrong with me?"
Yeah.
Like, I literally thought that something was wrong with me. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't. Like, I'm gonna say this out loud, and I'm like, I don't feel the love for my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Man, we all go through it. It's normal.
Yep.
It happens." Like, I loved her, obviously, but it just got 10 times harder. And then here's where the pardon my language, the mind fuck comes in. Is you're sitting here and your life is chaos. Nothing is yours anymore. You can barely get your own sleep, right? You can barely get your own space to lay down and not be touching someone and be able to sleep, right? I mean, and you're trying to run these companies and you're trying to do what's right. You're trying to be a good dad and a good husband. And I mean, it's just crazy. And people are looking at you and they're going, this is what messed with me the most. They go, you know what, Dakota? This is the best times of your life. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking
You know,
about.
You know what I'm talking about? They're
Yeah.
looking at you and they're saying, "Oh, this is the happiest, best times, the most enjoyable times of your life." And I'm like thinking to myself, I thought something was wrong with me.
Hmm.
And you know what, man? When I finally admitted that it was hard, and I had another parent go, "Hell yeah, it's hard. Like you're in the mix of it. You're in the survival." Somebody told me, they said, "You're in the survival mode of it right now, but it gets better." You know what? Just to know that somebody else felt the same way, it eased it all, and it was right. Like I, I got back in the groove, and I still go through phases with my kids of, "You guys, this is not enjoyable at all. It's chaotic. They're acting bad, right? Like they're going through these little, they all go through phases. And about the time you figure out a phase, man, they're in the next one. And
They're
it's
in the
just like
next
phase
one.
after phase. And but you know what I did is like I sat back and I started figuring out what mattered. Because what used to the little things that used to drive me nuts and drive me over the edge and overwhelm me was really the shit that didn't matter. Like I used to drive myself nuts. They would play in the morning, get all the toys out. And guess what I was doing right when they went on nap time? I cleaned all the toys
Clean
up.
them up. Yep.
So they got done, right? And that's the shit that overwhelms you, is figuring out what matters. It's okay to have your house dirty. You got a 2 and 3 year old. These are normal things. Your car is going to be nasty and dirty all the time when those kids are riding in it. It's okay. Stop stressing about the shit that doesn't matter. Let your kids be kids
Hmm.
and enjoy your time with them. And that's where it all like, whew, it started getting off of me. Like, you know what? People walk in my house, and you know what? My house is usually got toys everywhere. I got kids. You know what? Getting on an airplane, the best analogy I got is you know how when you got on an airplane before you had kids and a kid started screaming in front of you, you're like, dude, get that kid off here.
Yep.
Now, now I get on there because I flew with my kids, and I'm like, hey, can I help you? Like, let me help you. Like, it's okay. It's okay. We all got kids. It's crazy how that changes, isn't it?
Oh, totally. you know, I think you almost the mindset that you have, number one, and I've heard it on many other shows, is that you seem to have that service mindset. I've heard it over and over again of you're always wanting to help others, which I think is cool. The other thing too is not to stress over that stuff.
Mm.
One thing that's helped I mean, dude, four boys, 13, 11, 5, and 3. Like if my wife and I were to latch on to everything that's annoying and not try to find humor in it, we drive ourselves crazy. So like just the other night, I'm not kidding around. My 3-year-old's being potty trained. We were all eating dinner. He's like, I have to go pee. Gets up, pees, comes back out to the dinner table, no pants on, and just
Yeah,
sits down. And we're like, you could easily be the parent, like flips out, like, go put your pants on for but like he comes out and we all just laughed our asses off. Like, and
yeah,
he started laughing. We're like, oh my God, like who does that? Like a drunk person does that, right? But not, it was hilarious. So, but you can, it kind of goes back to that thing we were talking about in the beginning where it's like you have a choice. You're either a victim or you engage, right?
yeah,
You can either find the joy and happiness into something or not, right?
absolutely. I mean, it's all how you look at it. Like, and you
Right.
have the choice.
Right.
And looking at it bad and letting it stress you out does nothing good for you.
Right.
There's no positive at it. So why not make the choice to have control of it and to look at it in a good way?
Yeah.
Like,
What go ahead.
no, 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 you're a,
No, so as you raise your girls, I can definitely, I mean, the best thing you can do, right, is to be the man that you want them to end up with and to be that example. And I've heard you talk about being the example even in your business,
yeah.
in your mission, to help others. But as you look at Atlee and Sailor, you know, everything that you've experienced through people that you've surrounded yourself with, and you've mentioned a lot of them, a lot of elite folks and lessons you've learned, things you've been through in the military, all the training you've been through. What is most important for you as these girls get older? Like, hey, the top few things that I really want these girls to understand about life and about just life lessons in general. What is most important to you?
Well, number one, I want them to be strong, confident women. Um, I think that's the number one thing, right? I mean, a lot of things you see people do through life, it has nothing to do with who they are. It's not who they are. It's a survival instinct because they're weak and they're not confident in themselves. So I want them to be strong, confident, independent women. And then I think after I can build that good foundation, then I want them to have the biggest heart, to love people, to not judge, to live an honorable life, and to be servants of the world, the community, of the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want it to be unconditional.
Yeah.
I want them to have a sense of love and passion for human beings that's unconditional.
I love that, man. I know you don't have boys, but
Yeah.
you have, I mean, you've definitely, I mean, through the military, through what you do, you have been surrounded by a variety of different men, personalities, values, more all that good stuff, right? So being in that environment and being surrounded by other men through the military, training, professionally, whatever else, what advice do you have for fathers who are raising sons to be better men?
Fathers who are raising sons to be better men. You got to be the man you want them to be.
Yep.
It ain't. It's not with your words. It's with your actions. It's with who you are every single day. And look, if it's fake, they're gonna see it. They're gonna read through it, and guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna emulate your actions. And you gotta live it every day. It's not. It ain't just a T-shirt phrase. It ain't just a lesson. It's not just you being a parent. It has to be your way of life. And you know, I I think that that's the hardest part. I mean, it's the hardest part of being a leader, and that's what you are as a father and as a mother, right? As a parent, you're a leader, and the hardest part about being a leader is living it,
Mm-hmm.
is living it, because you got to wake up every day on your A game. And you know, I think the one thing that we as men are not very good at is like, look, like we're sometimes we're too mentally strong. Uh, we're physically strong, obviously, or we're strong because we're men, but we're not emotionally intelligent, right? Like we're not emotionally mature.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you get emotionally mature is by um the same way you have to get mature, or stronger with anything, you have to exercise it. And you have to do that with your emotions. Like, I mean, look, man, I gotta be honest, like I cry around my daughters all the time. My daughters say something, I mean, just talking about them, I'll start tearing up. That's fine. You know why? Because I'm not a weak man. I don't care what anybody thinks. Um, we've got to get to the point to where we can be vulnerable and that we can connect with people on an emotional level, because that's an important piece to having compassion for other human beings.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right, man. There's definitely a gap of emotional intelligence when it comes to raising boys.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of it comes from our interpretation as dads to be like our favorite answers for everything is fine and good, good and fine. Right?
Yep.
It's
Well,
kind of like the difference between people who are saying this is the happiest time of your whole life. And then that one guy who's like, you know what? No, it's actually really hard
yeah.
and it's going to mess with you. And the one last thing that I'll share with the audience and something that I really got from you, whether you knew you really shared it or not, was um, having other strong men in your life. I know we touched upon it a little bit with some of the people in your life, but it's that relatability thing to where you have like your team, your counsel, whatever you want to call it, to where like you can go be that real person. We're like, hey, right now it's not good and fine. It's fine and good. It's really hard right now.
Yeah.
And then to have that counsel to back you up and support. The last question I have for you is, like I said, the majority of guys are out there like, I'm the lone wolf, I'm strong, but they're miserable, right? The hardest thing for a guy to do is ask for help, and a lot of guys don't even have the skill set. They have no idea, like, well, how do I even go about building this team, like this band of brothers, this like-minded iron sharpens iron mentality? Like, how do I even go about doing that?
Oh, it's tough. I mean, it's tough, and it's always changing, right? You know, the one, and you got to understand what a good team is. Um, Let me tell you the worst team, the team that will drive you into the ground, is the ones that buy into your bullshit. Like I tell you the one thing I like, if I call somebody up, I was definitely, I understood this when I was married. Um, I'd call somebody up and I'd start bitching. She believes she did this. And let me tell you something. The worst guys, the ones that will crush your life and will ruin your marriage more than anything, is the ones that agree with you. The ones that are like, yeah, you know what? I wouldn't put up with that shit. Right? Like, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Those are cancers. That's not your circle. Your circle is the ones that hold you accountable, that believe in you in the times that you can't believe in yourself. That will, no matter what, they'll call you on your bullshit. They're not the ones that tell you what you want to hear. They're the ones that tell you what you need to hear, and you respect them. If you look at somebody and they call you out, and just the fact that that you disappoint them doesn't make you feel anything, they ain't your counsel. So how do you find it? Well, I always look at people and I go, and I have filing cabinets for them, right? Like I'm not, in theory, in theory.
Right. Right.
Um, I look at people and I go, look, and I figure out the traits I want to be like with them. There's nobody in the world you're gonna say I want to be 100% like them. There's nobody, right? Everybody's got their faults. Nobody's perfect. Everybody is struggling. Everybody has their weaknesses, whatever, right? But I always try to surround myself with a team, right? And in the military, look, you look at the Special Forces team, the Navy SEALs. On their team, they all have people who are really good at certain jobs. You got breachers, you've got dog handlers, you've got medics, you've got weapons guys, right? Like they all have different skill sets they're good at. And I try to build my team like that. And so I look at this guy and I go, you know what? That guy, he's always got a good attitude. That guy's a good father. This guy's a really good man. This guy puts others first. This guy here, like I have all those, and I always have them surrounding me, and I know like they all as a team push me to be better at every aspect of my life, and I do that, and I honestly, like, I'm not gonna say I test them, but at any point that that I ever feel like that they're yes men, I'm not gonna say I get rid of them as friends, but they're out of my circle. I call it my circle. They're gone. And I'm just fortunate to have a lot of good people in my circle. And you can find them. And you don't find them by walking in like you know everything and being tough.
Mm-hmm.
You find them by walking in and being vulnerable and showing your weaknesses and seeing how they can help you be better.
And plus, that's what makes you relatable. No one likes the dude with his chest puffed out, like, and life is perfect. In fact, that annoys the hell out of people.
It's a
So
turn off.
it
And that's
is.
why you're lone wolf. If you're a lone wolf, I would bet that you walk around with your chest out like you got it all going on and everything's great. People want to help people. Majority of people want to help people. And if you're a lone wolf, it's because you put your, it ain't because there's nobody else out there, because there's plenty of great men out there and great human beings out there. If you're a lone wolf, it's because you have isolated yourself and you've made decisions and you are presenting off something to be a lone wolf. Now, you might have had to do that to survive, to get through a few places, but I promise you, a lone wolf doesn't get stronger. You don't get stronger on your own. You get stronger with a team around you, making you better every day. Iron sharpens iron, right? It doesn't get sharper. An axe doesn't get sharper by you know, beating on something that's not sharpening it. And it takes iron to sharpen iron. And none of us are diamonds. We're not all that hard. We're all iron. And I think that you got to be able to until you can face and call out your own weaknesses and where your shortfalls are, you can't ever get stronger.
I like that advice of the iron sharpens iron, because that's true. I think a lot of us have what we like to call the cupcakes, and you can't sharpen a sword with a cupcake. You
Right.
can't sharpen a sword with someone who's just going to tell you what it is that you want to hear. In fact, and I've never actually have heard it said exactly like you did, but I liked it even more, which is the people that are going to do that are more cancers than they are. Like, I used to call them enablers, but I can definitely understand why it's more of a cancer.
But they're cancers, man. I mean, they'll get
Yeah.
in there and they'll it's kind of like ice in a rock.
Yeah.
They'll flow in there, and every time they freeze, water in a rock, and every time it freezes, it busts it open more. And I'm telling you, cancers, they will ruin your life.
I agree, man. Dude, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Like I said, I've done a ton of research on you in general, and I feel like we got to talk about a lot of things that you don't get the opportunity to talk about very often.
No, man, I really appreciate this. This is awesome. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
this
have
was
you come
fun.
on my show, and I listen. I need an invite to this hike next year.
Yeah, man, we are gonna do it. We actually, this was our second time doing it. My son, my 11-year-old wasn't with us last time, but he was this time. But I know we're going to be doing it next summer. But yeah, definitely get an invite.
I'm in, man. I appreciate it.
Cool, man. Well, hey, before we head out here, how can, as far as resources, things that you're doing, things that you're excited about, things that are coming up, how can men connect with you and get more?
Yeah, I got a lot of cool stuff coming out. Starting probably November. Be looking for it in November. Own the Dash is getting ready to change up a lot of stuff, so it's going to be really cool. I'm excited about that. You can find me at Owning It, the podcast, Owning It with Dakota Meyer. You can find me on Instagram, Dakota Meyer 0317, Twitter, all that, all the Facebook stuff, Own the Dash, and also Flipside Canvas.
Awesome, man. Well, we're going to have all your links in the show notes. And again, I thoroughly enjoyed this show, man. It was so cool getting to know you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. We got to get together and drink some beer sometime.
I'm down. Let's do it.
All right, man.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You bet.